Welcome to Dialogue Editing for Motion Pictures. In the last video, we learned the basic responsibilities of the dialogue editor. Now we'll look at some of the other things that dialogue editors do.
Now, there's a few more responsibilities of a dialogue editor. Even though we try very, very hard to fix all the problems, sometimes you just can't fix it. Maybe you're in a room that's just impossibly noisy, or there's a rainstorm under an aluminum roof. There's no way you can control that noise, no matter how good your editing skills are. So you just have to replace it. It's a process that in some places is called ADR, for automated dialogue replacement. Other people call it looping, other people call it post-sync. It's a potato-potato sort of thing. It depends on where you live. But it's the process of re-recording sounds that must be replaced. We as dialogue editors have to prepare that process because we basically order what we need, prepare the tracks, it gets done, comes back to us, and we have to cut it and make it work. Throughout the process of a film, certain things get in sync, certain things get out of sync, especially if there's like optical photography and things like this. But by the time the final print gets back to us, which is just before the mix, somebody has to sit down and get the tracks all in sync with the picture and say, this is the sync. Typically, it will be the dialogue editor who does that. Not necessarily, but typically because we're like sync nerds. We're like, sync is part of our job. Everybody assumes we're really good at it, so it kind of gets dumped onto us. And then we make a bounce, typically, of our final sync, give it to the effects editor, the Foley editor, the music editor, the backgrounds editor, and that becomes sort of the sync Bible for the rest of the film. And they say, okay, this is the blessed sync, and everybody works to that. The reason that's so important is, let's say you have some sort of sound that involves, let's say, like putting down a glass on a table. Here's the table, because I know my frame line is down here, so putting a glass on a table. It's there on the production, but the effects people decided to do it, and the Foley people decided to do it. If I have decided, okay, this is the sync of that, and then I make a bounce of my tracks and give it to all the other editors, they can line up the waveform and put their glass on my glass so that what you get is production coming from me, a weird effecty sound coming from the effects department, and another kind of quasi-realistic sound coming from the Foley. And it's really nice, kaboom, it's good. But if everybody's just like working willy-nilly to picture, I have my put down here, the Foley is here, and the effects are here, so it's sort of blah, blah, blah. And it's a big ugly mess. So agreeing on sync is very important. Finally, there's the mix. No matter how brilliant an editor you are, no matter how creative, no matter how knowledgeable, no matter what you know, we don't have a product. Nobody looks at, when people go pay for a movie ticket, they don't look at my tracks on a Pro Tools or on a Steenbeck or whatever and go, ooh, John makes good tracks. Yeah, nobody cares about my tracks. What they care about is my contribution to the mix. No matter how good my tracks are, if they can't easily be mixed, if they cannot be well understood by a mixer, if they are not logical for working on a console, it doesn't matter, because the mixer is going to waste all of his time trying to figure out what in the world I was thinking rather than making art of my stuff. So rather than taking my work and moving it to a higher level, if it's badly organized, he's just going to kind of go, well, okay, what were you trying to do? And it'll be okay, but it'll never be, divine. And during this mixing process, the last thing that dialogue editors sometimes get involved in is something called the M&E, the music and effects mix. When you make a movie, typically there's a version for your own native language, and then there's another version called the international version, the music and effects version, so that when you sell it to a foreign country, all they have to do is add just the voices and everything else is ready. It's like, a Betty Crocker cake. You just add some water, add an egg, bloof, and it's ready. When you make an M&E track, Most of it is just replaced by sound effects and backgrounds and things like this, but occasionally there's something very cool in the original recordings that you really want to save. There's a particularly unusual door that you have, or an unusual car sound or something. So you cut it out of the dialogue tracks, move it into the M&E tracks, so that when they're mixing the M&E, those unusual sounds are saved.
Preparing for ADR, confirming sync, readying the tracks for the mix, preserving sounds for the international version. These are a few of the less obvious duties of the dialogue editor, but they must be done. In the next video, we'll look at the relationship between the picture editor and the dialogue editor. Thank you for watching Dialogue Editing for Motion Pictures, a guide to the invisible art. This series is produced by the Sela Yaniv Sound School. Dialogue Editing for Motion Pictures, a guide to the invisible art, is available from Amazon and other online booksellers.